everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Positive Proof Podcast. I'm your host, Parmis, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you want to listen to more episodes like this one on self-improvement, mindset, and wellness, go ahead and hit that follow button to join the family. We have quite a few new listeners on this podcast, and I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in every Tuesday. And before I get into today's lesson, I just wanted to ask you guys for a kind favor, and that is if you haven't left a review, I would absolutely appreciate if you could do so. It helps so much to build this podcast and help it grow so that we can increase the positive impact we make and make it a bigger production. So I would absolutely love it if you could do that for me. But anyways, moving into today's episode, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I celebrated my 26th birthday this past January. Shout out to my fellow Aquarius babies. And so in honor of turning 26 recently, I thought I'd walk you through 26 life lessons I've gathered over, yes, you guessed it, 26 years on this planet. And the thing is, I'm still learning. I might sound confident about these lessons today, but catch me on a bad Tuesday and I might need a reminder of my own advice. Life's a continuous experiment and growth is a constant journey rather than a neat, tidy endpoint. And each lesson I'm about to share is sort of like a puzzle piece that helps me see the bigger picture of who I am and who I want to be. Some pieces I found during quiet moments alone, and others hit me like a ton of bricks in the middle of heartbreaks or in casual conversations with people I admire. So put your headphones on, get comfortable or not, go on a walk, and let's dive right into the 26 lessons I've learned in 26 years. Hopefully by the end, we'll both feel a bit more grounded, a little wiser, and maybe even inspired to embrace the beautiful mess of life just a smidge more. Number 1, spend time alone. I used to fill every waking moment with plans, such as dinners with friends, going on steady dates, weekend getaways, mostly because I was terrified of being alone with my thoughts. The idea of hanging out with just me, myself, and I felt daunting, like I'd be forced to face uncomfortable truths. And I actually also used to be scared to go for walks alone. And this was before COVID, before, going on hot girl walks was a trend. I literally used to be embarrassed to go for a walk by myself. I thought it was seen as, lame, but here's what happened when I finally stopped running. I realized that solitude is a spotlight for your inner voice. It shows you what you truly value, what you're afraid of, and what you want more in your life. Spending time alone doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Sometimes it's as simple as taking a walk without your phone, as I mentioned earlier, or having your morning coffee in silence. When you give yourself the gift of solitude, you learn how to read your own emotional signals. You'll figure out if you're exhausted and need rest, or if you're actually craving meaningful company. You'll spot your own red flags and green flags. And it's in these moments of self-reflection that clarity sneaks up on you. Clarity about who you are and who you're working towards becoming. Number 2, feelings do not equate compatibility. You can love someone to the moon and back and still not have a compatible future together. I used to think that if I felt those intense butterflies and if my heart did that little flip whenever they texted, it meant we were meant to be. But feelings can be misleading. They're often tangled in excitement, novelty, nostalgia, and sometimes just wishful thinking. And that's what happened in my case with my previous relationship. We were the exact same person and we loved each other so dearly. We were best friends, but we were not compatible and we were holding on to the nostalgia of our relationship. Compatibility is a more grounded concept. It's about shared values, life goals, and the way you resolve conflict. It's how you handle the boring Tuesday nights, not just the glamorous date nights. Sometimes the hardest lesson is walking away from someone you genuinely love because your futures aren't heading in the same direction. And that's okay. It's not a failure to acknowledge incompatibility. It's an act of self-respect for both you and the other person. I can't tell you how happy I am to have recognized this about my past relationship, because I am now in the most happy relationship because we're both compatible with each other. Number 3, real financial health doesn't care about appearances. I've met people who drove fancy cars but stressed about money, and others who wore simple outfits but had enough savings to travel the world for half a year without sweating it. Over time, I realized that real financial health is about having stability, freedom, and options. It's not about lying awake at night wondering if you can cover your bills or scrape together money for an emergency. It's tempting to flaunt status symbols like shoes, cars, designer bags, especially when you feel proud of your achievements or want to prove to others or yourself that you're quote unquote making it. But here's the kicker. Your bank account doesn't care if you're wearing last season's sneakers. Your peace of mind matters more than that fleeting nod of approval from strangers. So don't let social pressure warp your relationship with money. Build the foundation first, show off later, or never. The real win is living a life where your money works for you, not the other way around. Number 4, every blessing isn't just financial. We live in a culture that loves to measure success by the zeros in our bank accounts, but not every blessing has a dollar sign attached to it. Some blessings look like good health, supportive family, loyal friends who will show up with soup when you're sick, or even something as simple as a peaceful mind at the end of the day. When you believe every good thing in your life has to be monetizable, it's easy to feel like you're falling short if you don't hit certain financial milestones. But that kind of thinking blinds you to the gifts you already have, such as the ability to take a morning run without pain, or the friend who picks up your call at 2 a.m., or the slice of quiet in your day where you can just breathe. It's not about dismissing financial success. It's about not letting that be the only metric by which you judge your life. And when you expand your definition of blessings, your gratitude expands right along with it. Number 5, life's richness often comes from quieter moments. This one's actually my favorite. I used to think my life would only be meaningful if I was going at full speed, traveling to new places, attending big events, or making moves that impressed everyone around me. I chased one high-octane experience after another, only to discover that the real gold in life is found in the smaller, quieter pockets of everyday existence. One of my favorite things that I've mentioned in the past is dancing in the kitchen with my boyfriend while we're cooking. It is such a sweet moment that I cherish so dearly. Every time I think about it, it just brings me so much joy. That's one of those quieter moments that, it's not extravagant, it's not new, it's not exciting, but it makes me feel rich in life. Now think about it from a different standpoint. That Sunday morning coffee you get to sip while watching the sunlight filter in through your window sounds like it's out of a novel, I know, but it sounds nice, right? Or the unburied dinner with your family where you actually taste your food instead of rushing, or the bedtime phone call with a friend where both of you start to laugh uncontrollably over something trivial. These moments might not make it to Instagram, but they're the ones that fill your heart without you even noticing. Hustle and excitement have their place, but it's the subtle joys that often define a life well lived. Number 6, money comes back, but I'll never be in my 20s, is flawed thinking. Now, this popular trend out there romanticizing the idea that you should blow your money on experiences while you're young because, hey, you can always earn it back later is kind of ridiculous. I get it to a certain extent, but I don't think it's smart at all. And look, I'm all for living in the moment, but I've also realized that financial decisions made in your 20s can echo into your 30s and beyond. When you repeatedly justify impulsive spending with, I'll figure it out later, you risk starting a cycle of debt and stress that can overshadow whatever short-lived thrills you bought. It's not about never having fun or always pinching pennies, it's about balance. Splurge occasionally, create amazing memories, but do it from a place of financial stability. Knowing you won't be panicking about rent next month actually enhances the experience. In the long run, investing in yourself through savings, education, or a side hustle, it pays off in ways that drunken weekend escapades never will. Number 7, you will only ever be judged by someone who is unhappy with themselves. Judgment is sneaky. You might assume that if a person is successful, healthy, or well-educated, they wouldn't waste time picking apart someone else's life. But let's get real. Insecurity can hide behind any exterior. Someone can have the perfect job, the perfect abs, or the perfect wardrobe and still feel deeply unsatisfied with who they are. See, unhappy people judge because it's easier to criticize someone else than to fix their own discomfort. And recognizing this can be a game changer. Instead of internalizing someone's negative comments or letting their judgment make you doubt yourself, you learn to see it as a reflection of where they are. That doesn't mean you become arrogant or dismiss everyone's feedback. It means you choose which voices actually matter. Constructive criticism is different from judgment. One aims to help you grow, while the other aims to bring you down. Knowing the difference can save your self-esteem and your sanity. Number 8, pick up hobbies that are achievement-based, because not everything needs to be a side hustle. Not everything has to be done with the goal of making a profit or advancing your career. It's okay to do something just for the pure, unadulterated joy of it. Pick up hobbies that feed your soul, like rock climbing, painting, baking, learning a new language, or perfecting your grandma's lasagna recipe. Maybe it's woodwork or journaling. It might sound counterproductive in a world that applauds hustle culture, but having a hobby that's purely about personal fulfillment can anchor you in a busy, demanding life. And when you have a pastime that's about mystery, growth, or just experimenting for the fun of it, you reignite your sense of wonder. You also learn new skills that might unexpectedly seep into other parts of your life, like discipline, creativity, or problem solving. And sometimes taking a break from the grind to focus on a passion project can spark that kind of inspiration that leads to major breakthroughs at work or in your relationships. Go figure. Number 9, anxiety is just a feeling of discomfort, and you can learn to cope. Anxiety can feel like a swirling vortex pulling you under, making your heart pound, your thoughts race, and your palms sweat. But at its core, it's a feeling of discomfort that you can acknowledge and manage. Anxiety doesn't have to define you or dictate your every move, although sometimes it really tries hard to. But the first step is acceptance, recognizing that, yes, you feel anxious, but also understanding that this feeling isn't a permanent state of being. From there, learning coping skills like deep breathing exercises, journaling, therapy, or medication, it can be life-changing. Find the toolbox that works for you. The more you practice self-soothing, the less power anxiety has over you in the long run. It's okay to feel anxious sometimes. It means you're human. Just don't let it be the only voice in your head. Number 10, if you can't control what you consume, it will consume you. I've talked about consumption multiple times in the past, whether it's food, social media, online shopping, or mindless streaming. If you don't learn how to set boundaries around what you ingest, it's going to find a way to seep in and control you. Overeating can lead to health issues, doom scrolling can tank your self-esteem, and overspending can bury you in debt. It's as simple as that. Taking control isn't about being a disciplinarian to yourself 24/7. It's about being mindful. Ask yourself why you're scrolling Instagram at 2 a.m. Are you bored, or are you just avoiding something? Before you hit add to cart, think, do I really need this, or am I just feeling anxious or lonely? When you pause to question your impulses, you gain power over them. And that power, it translates to a healthier, happier, and more sustainable lifestyle. Number 11, focus on your own journey and stop caring what other people think. Comparison is the thief of joy is more than just a quote. It's a reality check. The moment you start measuring your progress against someone else's highlight reel, you are stepping onto a hamster wheel of dissatisfaction. You might be making huge strides in your own life, but if you're constantly looking over the fence, you'll miss all the good that's happening right in front of you. Think of your life as a unique blueprint. Sure, get inspired by others and learn from their experiences, but don't let that overshadow your own journey. Because the truth is, people are often too wrapped up in their own insecurities to be judging you as harshly as you imagine. And the ones who do judge, refer back to lesson number 7. They're speaking from their own seat of unhappiness. Do you really want them as your guiding light? Number 12, embrace your mistakes, but don't live in them. We're all going to mess up. Sometimes it'll be, losing money on a bad investment or botching a relationship because you said something you shouldn't have. Mistakes are powerful teachers, but staying stuck in shame or regret keeps you locked in the past. And the healthier approach is to acknowledge what you did wrong, figure out what went sideways, and take steps to do better. Forgive yourself in the process. We are human, which means imperfection is part of the package deal. The real growth happens when you mine your errors for lessons and then apply those lessons. If you're too busy beating yourself up, you won't have the mental space or energy to pivot or fix what went wrong. Mistakes can shape us, but they really don't have to define us. Number 13, you are allowed to pivot in life. I used to think you pick one path and commit to it forever, whether it's a career, a location, or relationship. But life isn't usually a straight line. You have permission to change your mind, to shift gears, or to pursue something new if the old route isn't fulfilling anymore. We put so much pressure on ourselves to have everything figured out by a certain age. Like there's a universal script we all have to follow, but sometimes the best thing you can do is rewrite your script. Maybe you went to school for engineering and now you feel drawn to teaching. Or perhaps you realize a relationship you've had for years is no longer healthy. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you're evolving, and that's something to be proud of. Number 14, stop romanticizing the hustle. I'm guilty of this, I know. Somewhere along the line, hustle culture got turned into an idol. Like the more exhausted you are, the more important or successful you must be, the better life is. I've tried it. The late nights, early mornings, cramming work into every nook and cranny of my schedule. And sure, I got a lot done, but I was also on the fast track to burnout. And sometimes I still am. It took me a while, and it's still taking me a while, to see that working yourself to the bone isn't a badge of honor, it's a red flag. It signals that something's off in your priorities or your time management. Productivity has its place, but if you never come up for air, you're missing out on the essence of living. Real success, in my eyes, is having the bandwidth to enjoy your achievements, time with loved ones, personal wellness, and the creativity that flourishes when you're not chained to a to-do list. Now, of course, some people choose to hustle now and sacrifice these things so that they can enjoy more of it later, and that's totally okay. Sometimes that's also what I have to tell myself in times where I'm working 24/7, so make sure you're just aware of it all. Number 15, growth isn't linear. I'm sure we've all heard this one. Personal growth isn't a neat upward trajectory. It's more like a roller coaster with loops, twists, and sudden drops. You might feel like you've conquered a personal demon like overthinking or procrastination, only for it to show up again months later. And you know what? That's normal. Every new level of life can bring back old patterns or insecurities you thought you'd left behind. Instead of beating yourself up over backsliding, recognize it as a sign you're pushing your boundaries. Life keeps presenting lessons until we truly absorb them. And each cycle helps you tackle the same issue from a deeper, more mature angle. So give yourself credit for how far you've come and keep pushing through. Remember, progress over perfection. Repeat after me. Progress over perfection. Number 16, good friendships need nurturing. Friendships don't automatically sustain themselves just because you share a history. As life gets busier, career demands, romantic relationships, family obligations, it's easy to let months or even years slip by without truly connecting to your friends. But neglect usually leads to drifting apart. And the way I see friendships are, mostly they're situational, unless you really invest in them to make them long term. If someone matters to you, make the effort. Send that random text, plan a video call, or arrange a mini reunion. The best friendships can weather time and distance, but they still need a little TLC to stay strong. Otherwise, you end up with a surface level relationship that can't support you through life storms. Cherishing genuine friendships is like putting emotional money in the bank. You'll have a safety net of love and understanding when you need it most. Number 17, boundaries are an act of love for yourself and others. It is not selfish to set boundaries. It's actually one of the most compassionate things you can do for yourself and for the people around you. When you constantly let others overstep your limits, resentment and burnout are inevitable, and nobody thrives in an environment of bottled up frustration. Boundaries can be as simple as telling your boss you won't respond to emails after 7 p.m., or telling a friend that certain topics are off limits because they hurt you. For me, it's politics. It might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to people pleasing, but in the long run, boundaries allow your relationships to be more authentic and loving. They let people know how to treat you, and they keep you from pouring from an empty cup. Number 18, we touched on this idea briefly, but comparison kills joy. This really deserves its own spotlight. Social media is basically a highlight reel, and we all know that by now because nobody's posting about their messy bedrooms, their diet failures, or the nights they cry themselves to sleep. I can't tell you how many times I've had nights where I've been crying and I didn't post it on Instagram. But we still compare our real life to these curated snapshots. The next time you catch yourself feeling inadequate because someone else seems happier or more accomplished, remember that you're likely comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. Everyone has struggles, insecurities, and off days. And by focusing on your unique trajectory, you'll find a lot more room for gratitude and self-improvement rather than envy or despair. Number 19, I always talk about this, but celebrate the small wins. You really don't have to wait for a massive milestone like a graduation, a promotion, or a big launch to congratulate yourself. So celebrate the small wins, like sticking to a new habit for a week or finishing a difficult task you've been avoiding. These all deserve recognition too. And when you make a habit of celebrating small victories, you create a positive feedback loop that motivates you to keep going. It's the mental equivalent of giving yourself a pat on the back. Not only does it boost your self-esteem, but it also reminds you that progress is made in increments, day by day. Life gets a lot more enjoyable when you notice and appreciate the small strides forward. Number 20, your environment shapes you way more than you realize. The people you surround yourself with, the content you consume, and the physical space you inhabit all leave an imprint on your mindset and behavior. If you're around chronic complainers, you might find your attitude soaring. If your home is cluttered, you might feel more stressed or scattered. Take inventory of your environment and ask yourself which parts lift you up and which drag you down. Sometimes the hardest step is distancing yourself from a negative friend group or reorganizing your life, but the payoff is huge. When you consciously create an environment that fosters growth, whether it's choosing supportive friends or making your workspace bright and tidy, you give yourself a head start on staying positive and productive. I used to let my room get super messy and then do these 8-hour-long Sunday resets. I no longer do that. I realized it was so counterintuitive and I was constantly stressed and I felt this chaos in my life. So now what I do is I do closing shifts at the end of each night and I always put stuff away as soon as I use them. This has been the biggest game changer in my life. Number 21, a healthy relationship with yourself is the foundation for everything else. We often focus on our external relationships, whether it's romantic or your family, platonic relationships, and assume our happiness hinges on how other people treat us. But how about the relationship you have with yourself? That's the lens through which you experience life. And if you're constantly criticizing yourself or doubting your worth or ignoring your needs, that negativity spills into your interactions with others. Conversely, when you practice self-compassion, self-awareness, and healthy boundaries, it's like setting a stable foundation upon which all other relationships can flourish. It sounds corny to say, love yourself first, but it's more about mutual respect with yourself, listening to your body and emotions, and honoring your own dignity, and being kind to your mistakes instead of punishing yourself. Number 22, learn to say no without guilt. We often say yes when we really mean no because we don't want to offend someone or miss out on an opportunity or appear unhelpful, but saying yes to everything is a fast track to burnout and resentment. Your time and energy are finite resources, and every yes you give to something that doesn't align with your priorities is a no to something that does. I can't tell you how many times I've had to turn down really cool opportunities when it came to my work because my time and energy are valuable and I need to prioritize. This lesson took me a while to learn because I hate the idea of letting people down, but I realized that I was letting myself down by overcommitting and then failing to deliver quality work or showing up half-heartedly. When you say no appropriately, you're actually preserving the integrity of your yeses. People learn to trust that when you agree to something, you're genuinely all in. Number 23, being productive doesn't always mean you're living well. Productivity is great until it becomes an obsession. I once believed that if I wasn't achieving, checking things off my list, or pushing myself to the brink, I was wasting time. But constant productivity doesn't guarantee a fulfilling life. It just ensures you're busy. Rest, play, creativity, and downtime are also crucial pieces of a balanced life. And sometimes the best ideas come when you're taking a shower or casually strolling through the park, not when you're hunched over your laptop forcing progress. Being unproductive in the traditional sense can actually be a form of investing in yourself, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Number 24, forgiveness frees you and not the other person. Holding on to a grudge can feel like clutching a hot coal, hoping the other person gets burned, but in reality, you're the one who gets hurt. Anger and resentment require energy that could be channeled into something more life-affirming. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're excusing terrible behavior or welcoming toxic people back into your life with open arms. It means you're choosing to let go of the emotional baggage that weighs you down. You're not obligated to remain friends with someone who hurt you, but releasing the bitterness can be an enormous relief. You're doing it for your own peace of mind, not as a favor to them. Number 25, there's no such thing as a perfect timeline. I used to think I needed to graduate by this age, land my dream job by that age, get married by another, and so on. Like, life came with a built-in schedule. With my old timeline, I should have been married and had kids by now, but that didn't happen, did it? Reality doesn't adhere to neat timelines, and some people marry their high school sweethearts at 22 while others find their soulmate at 40. Some start successful companies at 19 and others find their calling at 50. When you chain yourself to a strict timeline, you risk feeling like a failure if you don't hit those milestones on schedule. But life doesn't work that way. You have your own pace, shaped by your own experiences, opportunities, and even luck. So embrace the open-ended possibilities. Just because you're behind someone else's schedule doesn't mean you're failing. Sometimes the detours end up being the best part of the journey. Last but certainly not least, never forget that you are inherently worthy of happiness. This can be a tough one if you've internalized negative beliefs or if you're used to putting yourself last, but the simple truth is you don't have to earn the right to be joyful or at peace. Some days you might wake up questioning your worth, and maybe you messed up at work or a relationship ended or you're just feeling low for no apparent reason. That doesn't mean your value is diminished. Your right to happiness doesn't vanish because of external circumstances. The more you remind yourself of this fundamental truth, the quicker you bounce back from self-doubt, and the more you own your worth, the freer you'll feel to pursue the life you envision. And there you have it, 26 lessons in 26 years. I hope that as you listened, at least a couple of these resonated with you or gave you a fresh perspective. Remember that lessons aren't static and you don't just learn them once and become a flawless human being. You revisit them, you refine them, and sometimes you stumble back into old habits. But that's the dance of personal growth. And maybe it's a little overwhelming to consider all 26 at once, but you don't have to. You can pick one to focus on this month, and maybe it's spending more intentional time alone or finally giving yourself permission to pivot in your career. Life isn't a race to see who can check off the most self-improvement boxes first. It's a journey of self-discovery, figuring out what works for you and giving yourself grace along the way. So make sure to keep that in mind. But that is a wrap. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this deep dive of life lessons. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you so, so much. And I can't wait to chat with you again in next week's episode. Lots of love, Parmis.